Hi, and welcome to Random Fandom FC, the podcast where each week I meet a new fan and explore how they came to support their team, what's been their highest high, their lowest low, and anything else I should know. We look ahead to their next game and get a prediction, and then next week we'll check in to see if we were a blessing or a curse to the teams that we follow. My name's Rob, an Arsenal fan living in the States, and I'll be your host. Right, last week we were following Crystal Palace as we'd had fan Laurie come on the show. He'd been very bullish and predicted a 2 or 3-0 win for Palace with Mateta scoring. I'd gone for a 2-2 draw thinking that Moyes has got a better tune out of Everton and they might pick something up on the road. Well, I was the closest to being right, but we were both wrong as Palace lost 2-1 to Everton. Beto put them 1 up, continuing his fine form. Mateta equalised just after the break. Alcaraz scored, I think, on one of his first starts for Everton with about 10 minutes left. Palace pushed and pushed and pushed to try to make it 2-2 and bring my prediction home. But alas, it wasn't to be. So for both Laurie and for us following Palace, we follow a loss. But let's not get downbeat. Another week means another team to follow. So let's find out who we're following on Random Fandom this week. Well, as the crowd is chanting, who are you? Who do I have? And who do you support?
So I'm Rob Stockford, and I support Oldham Athletic.
Oh, so we've got two Robs on today. This could get confusing, but okay. So Oldham fan, Oldham Athletic.
Yeah.
I was, I always do like to do a little bit of research. Obviously, I remember Oldham when I was growing up as a kid. They were in the top flight, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Yeah.
do have to mention two things when I looked at this. Right, you've got an owl as your badge.
Yeah.
You've recently upgraded it because it looks a bit dicey, the old owl.
The Angry Owl.
Yeah, the angry owl. Okay. So obviously, you and Sheffield Wednesday are both famous for your owls, but then you and Wigan are both famous for your Latics. So who owns them? Are you going to say that like it's Oldham's owl and it's Oldham's nickname?
We are the original Latics. There's only two football league clubs. Now, Wigan didn't exist till 1967. So Oldham existed in 1895, right? So I would therefore say we hold claim to that, and they're the plastic Latics, as you'll hear around our way, right? Plastic Latics, right? From the badge, we've always had it, and that's part of where we come from. And actually, Oldham's town badge is there with the owl. So that's where that comes from. But Wednesday can be the owls all they want, to be fair. We don't have any badge rivalry on that side.
I will say your owl looks cooler. I will say that.
That's the old. So the owl now is very much based on when I started supporting them back in sort of 1974, when you used to have those cotton scratchy tops and the owl was on it. So that's where that sort of comes from.
That is a perfect segue into take me on the Oldham origin story. Why Oldham? And obviously, from the sounds of things, quite a long story.
Yeah, well, I'm old, so it is, and you don't change your team, right? So, why Oldham? So back in the day, and when my dad wanted to get out of going shopping, I think with my mum, he used to go to the football, right? And he would get tickets for Oldham. So he worked for the Norweb, it was called, which is the Northwest Electricity Board as was. And that was based sort of halfway between where I lived and Oldham. And some of his mates were City fans and some of his mates were Oldham fans. So we would get tickets for both and we would go to both games. So I could have been a City fan, right? And I've been to Main Road a number of times. I know, and that's from where I lived. All my mates were City fans as well. So that's a bad piece, bad times, right? But we went to Oldham and he settled on consistently going to Oldham. And this is the true story because it was easy to park and he didn't like crowds. So that is why I'm an Oldham fan.
Well, that's epic.
Yeah. So, and I've been going, I can't say the first game, but I've been going since I was about 4 years old. So around about 1974, 75, sat there. And if you know Oldham, it's the coldest ground in the country and there's in many surveys for this. So sat there freezing my little fingers off and had watching not the best football for an hour and a half. So my dad didn't have to go shopping on a Saturday afternoon, basically. That's where it comes from.
So, when's your first real? Because you probably have, I guess, some memories of the being really, really small and being vaguely there, but it's probably
Yeah.
you're a little bit older too. You've probably the bugs really hit you, and Oldham's your team through and through. And like, what's your first kind of match that you really remember then?
I, in terms of games, I remember us playing. You mentioned them earlier, Chef Wednesday. We lost 2-1, but it was my first real away game where we went to Hillsborough, and it was a great travelling support. I think as I say, we lost 2-1, but we were 1-1, and an old crowd hero, Roger Wilde, scored for Oldham, who also played for Wednesday. So there was a lot of bands. So I remember that. I remember Simon Stainrod playing on lots of games and scoring. I remember one from what seemed like the halfway line against QPR, who he signed for eventually in the late 70s. And then it was like people like Vic Hallam and Richard Kawanicki. So remembering the players and late Tuesday nights rather than the specific games.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I sort of came into it. He was our Polish international, Ryszard Kawanicki, right? Or Richard Kawanicki, as they say in Oldham. And we had Carl Valentine, who was from Canada and played for Vancouver Whitecaps, and then swapped out for Oldham for a while, and then went back. So I remember these guys of folklore, which became heroes, and that's sort of how it grew, really.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we'll come back to some of the other players because I was kind of just looking, just a little bit selfishly, at kind of my era of when I would remember sort of following along.
So the Andy Richies and the Ian Marshalls and the Earl Barrett.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we'll come back to some of those players in a bit, but let's get the bad bit out of the way. If I look at this, from 1991, where we have the heady heights of being in the top flight and being a founding member of the first Premier League in 1992, it's fair to say it's kind of been a bit of a downwards trend since.
There's one person is responsible for that, by the way.
Well, so maybe you can touch on that. Let's talk about, is it somewhere in that journey down to the National League that is your lowest low, or something else altogether? What's kind of been the lowest low of your Oldham fandom?
There's quite a few. So losing 1-0 at home to Maidenhead on Tuesday wasn't a high, right? No offense to the Maidenhead fans, obviously, because it is what it is. The first huge low, so I'll go through huge lows that I remember rather than actual lows. So first year of the playoffs, and we'd been in the old second division all of my time. I mean, I think we got promoted from the third division. We went fourth, third, and then the second, and we're there for about 20 years until we got promoted, right? And when they brought the playoffs in, we were the first team to finish third in the old second division and not go up. But even worse, we were playing Leeds, who we finished 7 points ahead of. We lost 1-0 at Leeds. We scored to go 2-0 up in the, I think it was 118th minute of the playoff semi-final. And they then scored to make it 2-1 in the 119th minute. Keith Edwards poked it through Andy Goram's legs, and we went out on away goals. So after a whole season, not being out of the top three all year, we finished third, the first time you didn't get promoted to the first division, and we went out on away goals.
Oh, man. Yeah, okay.
Leeds, luckily, then went off and lost to Charlton because it was the old finished third bottom in the first division. Again, that was the first scenario of it. So that was a pretty low. I remember being a young, I was sort of 16 at the time, so hard enough to be gutted and have all the Mickey taking and the banter with the lads, and still low enough to have that one chance of success snatched away, which was difficult. The other biggest low, we lost the Littles Cup final to Nottingham Forest in 1990, but actually we'd had a great cup runs, and whilst it was gutting at the time, it was 1-0 and we could have won. It's one of them, right? I'll take that. What was much worse was the FA Cup semi-final in 1994.
Mark Hughes,
where he's offside, by the way, in the old ruling of it, just to give this, right? And Mark Hughes has scored that wonder volley in the 119th minute, which would have meant Oldham would have gone to Wembley, would have been the finalists. Oldham were at that stage well clear of relegation, sort of mid table, maybe slightly below in the old Premier League, and didn't win again all season. And it's been a downward spiral all the way down.
It's funny you say that because when I kind of prepared for this, I kind of always used good old Chat GPT just to get me
Yeah,
a decent look, and then I go fact check it because it has got things that are wrong a couple of times. But one of it on here, its main thing was fans of Oldham described the last minute equaliser by Hughes as the start of the decline from which they've never recovered. It was a sliding doors moment when Hughes equalised and they didn't win another game all season and got relegated on the final day after a draw at Norwich.
yeah. We drew, I think it was a 1-1 or 2-2 at Norwich. I can't remember the exact, but that wasn't the worst of it. The pain was that that equaliser, and the club just never recovered from it. We just never recovered. And it was that sliding doors moment. And we could have gone 2-0 up as well. But Graham Sharp missed a sitter, an open goal in the second period of extra time. But anyway, I'm not bitter.
And that, like you say, it kind of was the start of the decline. You end up going down in '94. You go down again in '97. You go down again in 2018, and then probably the one that I think both Dan for Shrewsbury and Jamie for Hereford, kind of the 22 dropping into the National League and out of the professional. That's the real. Well, I like to get your view on this. That's the real big relegation in a way because it's very, very different from being in the top four divisions than it is being outside it.
For me, it's not. Um,
Okay.
and it's a hard one. So on the face of it, of course it is, right? Dropping out the Football League is a dreadful thing. And a club like Oldham sort of gone through thin and thinner and go through that with the fan base they've got and whatever is terrible, right? And it's not a big indictment of the proper fair and proper owner piece because we've been ripped apart by, and not always by bad intentions, but latterly definitely bad intentions in terms of what's happened and the way that the club was governed. And actually that relegation brought relief because the person who had it sold it to the guy who's bought the club now, and there's still discontent about this and that, and the manager and all the usual stuff. But the club on the whole is on a different cycle than it was, and is looking more upwards than downwards at the moment. We get, that can change, but you've got a good owner. He's a local lad. He's a bit eccentric. I don't think Frank would mind us saying that, Frank Rothwell. But he's like the oldest guy to row across the Atlantic for Alzheimer's, and he's the president of Alzheimer's research in the UK. So he's done a lot of good things as well. And he doesn't know a lot about football, but he's an Oldham lad, and he cares about the town,
right,
and the culture and where it is. And he's brought it all back together. He spent, I think McElhaney and I'm being stupid now. The Wrexham guys.
Oh yeah, Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds spent $1 million on Wrexham. Frank spent 12 million bringing the team, the club, and the stand and the ground all back together.
Oh, awesome!
So the investment is there, right? And what he's done, and the investment in the playing staff, what they're doing about the match experience, a fans bar and the way the club is running. It's not great on the pitch. It's not the worst, but there's a lot of, you get fickle fans, right? But having been where we were and where we are now, that is not we feel like there's more of an upward trajectory than a downward trajectory with where we are at the moment. Whereas when the last owners had it, it was all right for 3-4 months, and it's just been awful since. And it's just decline after decline after decline. And it was, those guys didn't do a lot for Oldham. Frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, you say looking upwards, you're sitting in the playoff spots at the moment. I mean, this is the structure of this one's terrible, really, isn't it? It's just the champion goes up, and then I think it's six teams get caught in the playoff. But you've got to be in it to win it, right? So you'd rather be in the playoffs than not.
Yeah.
Looks like Barnet probably got top spot.
Barnet or York, I think. But we've got to play them both. And if we put a run together, who knows, right?
Wow, exactly. So if we think about then looking up rather than looking down, let's go the nice side of this coin and say what's been the highest high? What's the one memory when you kind of look back on, you're like, oh, that's just the best ever as an Oldham fan?
So the best ever has got to be winning the old second division title. So again, 1990. We weren't outside, or 90, well, I think it was 91, but we weren't outside the the top two all year. And in that game, we were second, third, and then first. So we were 2-0 down. We were going up anyway because they changed it. So the top three went up and then the fourth in the playoff. So we were going up anyway, right? And Notts County came fourth, I think, and joined us. But it was, we were 2-0 down with an hour gone. And basically we pulled it back. Paul Bernard, who at the time was a young trainee, scored. I think, I can't remember who got the other, second. And then we had a penalty in like the 93rd minute. Andy Barlow running down was felled. Neil Redfern stepped up and sent Kevin Pressman the wrong way. And Oldham won the title. The game at Upton Park, because West Ham were the other guys going for the championship. So us and Wednesday were first and third. West Ham was second at the start of play. Wednesday, if they beat us, moved to second, and we were third, and West Ham won the title. Right? That's how it was. We won it in the I think it was 96th minute by the time, on 97th minute that they'd blown up, and we got the title. The trophy was then helicoptered up to Boundary Park because it was at Upton Park because they were the first most likely team to win it because they were in charge and they were at home, and we got the trophy engraved with West Ham United, first, second division champions on it, which then they took off and did. It was Barclays at the time, so that was complete pandemonium, right? As you can imagine, to go to a whole season and win the title in the last minute of the season, extra time, and from being 2-0 down, right? And John Sheridan, who's an Oldham legend, was playing for Wednesday on the day and actually missed the sitter, which could have cost us. So we reckon we got into his blood then anyway. So that was a huge tie. Then we had one a couple of years later where we beat Oldham, were 9 points behind Palace in the inaugural Premier League season. We were 9 points behind with 3 games to go. Right, we hadn't won 2 on the spin all year. And on the Sunday, we beat Villa at Villa Park to give the title to Man U.
Yeah.
Because Villa were second, right? We then beat Liverpool at home 3-2 on the Wednesday and beat Southampton 4-3 on the Saturday with we were 4-1 up, by the way. And Letitia got a hat-trick. And Palace got beat at home by Arsenal, and Ian Wright scored a hat-trick, I think, against Palace, so his own team, if you know where he's come from. And we stayed up on goal difference.
Oh wow.
So that was the great escape for all great escapes, right? So we took 9 points and stayed up on goal difference because Palace didn't get another point.
Oh, that's mental. I remember the Villa. Yeah, I remember the title thing. Yeah, I'd forgotten it was Oldham. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So that's what we did. We scored. We were at Villa Park. Darren Beckford missed his touch, and Nicky Henry went and drilled it in the far corner. And they hit the bar about 7 times. I think it was silly. But
I could see. I mean, just looking at you on the video, just you are beaming from ear to ear telling the story. It's just fantastic.
These are just the great things, and we've had lots of good things. You know, the year that Palace, after getting beat 9-0 by Liverpool at home, then beat them in the FA Cup semi-final. It was Oldham United was the next semi-final, and we drew 3-3.
Yes,
at Main Road, and we should have won that game. And eventually we went out again. Joe Royle, Nick Henry scored. Right, this is a history. This is a sliding doors moment. Nicky Henry scores in the game. Ball hits the bar, bounces over the line, as you see it, and bounces out. We lose 2-1 after extra time. We would have won, by the way, 2-1 in normal time had that goal been given. Ball bounces out. Joe Royle, I remember the ref, plays on. Mark Robbins scores in extra time. And United win 2-1 and get to the final against Palace. If they've lost that, Fergie's sacked.
Yes.
So Joe Royle, with the ball going in the goal from Oldham, and he didn't have goal line technology or whatever, but it's about a 20, 25-yard hit, hits the underside of the bar, bounces in behind Leighton and bounces out. for Oldham win that game, which they should have done in normal time 2-1, Fergie's gone. So people talk about the Mark Robbins goal at Forest. That goal was much more of a sliding door moment.
Well, it's funny you say that because I know we're not talking about Man United, but
Yeah,
we were just talking. There's a lot of chat at the moment about which Premier League managers should get sacked and should Amarim be got rid of again. And
yeah,
it's just like some back in the day, I always think there was a little bit more patience around. But Fergie was on thin ice. I
yeah,
mean, he got there, I think, in '86 or whenever it was.
yeah,
And he was skating thin, and like you say, they pull the trigger a little early on that one, or the goal gets given and he gets fired. And oh my gosh, what an era that doesn't
yeah,
happen. But okay, right. So that's the highest high. You already kind of gave some views on the players. I was going down the list just to see ex Oldham players that I might remember.
yeah,
Now I was googling around, so we've mentioned Andy Gorham.
yeah. He was a legend. A Scottish lad with the broadest Scottish accent, came from Bury.
And I saw that we had, Arsenal hero in the cup final. Andy Linnigan played for.
Andy Linnigan, of course, he was great.
Dennis Irwin played for Oldham.
We got him on a free from Leeds and sold him that season of the cup to United because it was at the end of his contract. Irwin was brilliant for us as well.
Graham Sharp.
Yeah,
Ian Marshall with his magnificent mullet.
yeah.
The thing I noticed on that, though, when I was just going through, they have him listed as a defender/striker.
So Marshy started as a centre half and then wanted to play up front, and Royle put him up front, and the defences couldn't handle him. So he was always a reluctant centre half and always got pushed up front. But when we were really entertaining, Marshy was at the heart of it. He was brilliant. He was great.
Earl Barrett, I think was like one of your record transfer out or something for 1 point something.
Yeah, he was the record track, 1.75 to Villa when fees were normal, but he was a 35 grand we got him for from City, and he wasn't making it. And if it wasn't for Des Walker, Earl Barrett would have played for England 50, 70 times. He was a very similar player.
As the old chant says, you'll never beat Des Walker. So,
So you never beat Earl Barrett, right? Obviously, but he was quality.
um, you got Paul Gerrard, Gerrard, who
Yeah,
went to Everton as the keeper.
he's the one that Di Canio, when Di Canio catches the ball for
Yeah.
when West Ham are
Oh.
crossing it and he's lay on the floor. That's Paul Gerrard. There you go.
Okay. John Sheridan, who I didn't realise became your manager as well.
3 times. John Sheridan is an Oldham legend.
I remember him from being in Sheffield Wednesday because he was in the team that we beat twice in the 2 cup finals that season.
Yeah,
So yeah, and then I don't know if you already mentioned him earlier, but a
yeah.
friend of mine, my very good friend from back home, he was the best man at my wedding, Dan. His dad owned a pub in Cambridge in the 90s, and we used to go along and watch Cambridge United. And I never got to see this guy play, but Carlo Corazin that
Okay.
came across, and he was like a cult hero at Cambridge. He was my mate's favourite player for a while. He was gutted when he left. But yeah, I saw that he came and did 20 goals in 110 games for you.
Yeah, we loved him. Oldham fans love Carlo as well. Corazin's a legend's probably too high a status compared to with his in, but he's certainly well revered and well looked at. People like him a lot.
So, favourite player is difficult because you've been supporting Oldham probably like say 10 years longer than I've been supporting Arsenal. If somebody asked me my all-time favourite Arsenal player, that's difficult.
Yeah,
I've probably got a couple over different generations of teams. So, who's your kind of favourite, let's say, couple of players that you just sort of remember fondly? That
yeah. So Gorham is definitely up there. Was absolutely brilliant for us. Then you got to look at Andy Ritchie and Frankie Bunn, both from the glory. They were fantastic. Scholesy was the one they asked him he was playing for England, and they asked Paul Scholes who his favourite player were, and they were expecting him to say Zinedine Zidane or Ronaldo, and he said Frankie Bunn.
that's a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, he was brilliant. Linnigan was great for us, but we had people like Richard Jobson was a great centre half we had as well. And then you go into, as we've dropped down the leagues, people like Sean Gregan was really good for Oldham when we were playing and became a bit of a cult hero. I've got lots and lots of great players. The legends, though, are people like it is Gorham, it is Andy Ritchie, it is Earl Barrett, Dennis. You can talk about a number of them who went on.
Yeah.
Roger Palmer is probably the outstanding. He's our top scorer ever, and he was a midfielder. But he you just couldn't track him. He was the original run deep, find him and just find himself in space. And he was with Oldham. We signed him from City for 10 grand, and he just stayed at Oldham for the whole of his career. Then
Oh, nice. What about the current crop? Anybody that you look at that team and kind of think, oh, we're not gonna be able to hold on for them too much longer because they need to be at a higher level than this, or would you say everyone's kind of it's a fairly balanced team?
we've lost a couple. So we had a lone player, Josh Stones, who's now gone to York, which so we don't like him anymore. He was looking good. I like James Norwood, but he's got his critics in where we have. I like the keeper again for the level. I think we've got some decent players. I think, at the back, Charlie Raglan is a great centre half and controls it. Made a bit of a rick on Tuesday, but generally his performances are up there. And we got a number. I think there's a whole team spirit, and the fans are moaning at the moment we haven't signed a striker or we've got this problem, but I think there's a good team spirit I get at Oldham at the moment, and it's that collective of the group that's doing it. And they've got a big budget for that league. We're still getting 5,500, 6,000 sort of average in the conference. So we are one of the bigger clubs there, and we travel pretty well. Mike Fondop is the cult hero. God's number 9, they call Mike Fondop. And he's been there like 3 years. So he's the one that all the fans love. He's got a big bird. He's crazy. You never know what's going to happen next with Mike Fondop. But he scored, I think, 15 this season or something, 15 or 16. And he's unplayable.
Never know what's going to happen because of like outrageous skill and stuff.
Oh, he'll miss from a yard and then score an overhead kick from 20, right? But he's also big. He's physical. And everyone just comes and he plays with a big smile on his face. And he energizes the team and the fans.
I don't know if you're familiar with him. My brother-in-law's a big Swansea City fan, and before they got up into the Premier League and they were in the Championship, they had Lee Trundle.
So Trundle's from Staley Bridge and places like that, so he's been well known around. But again, yeah, he's a cheeky, funny, committed guy. Yeah.
Cheeky plays with a smile on his face, but has got a massive bag of tricks that all of a sudden he'll roll one off his shoulder and volley it from 40 yards or something. And everyone loves those types of players. So that's the current crop then. So we're coming towards the end now. We got to look forward. Because of the day this is going to drop on, we won't do your coming game tomorrow away at Dagenham because I'll drop this on Sunday. And then, the thousands of people that are going to follow online the Oldham result, we need to give them a week to look forward to it. So yeah, that's if I can persuade my sons to download it 1,000 times. So the week after, it's a home match for you, but it's the big one. Yeah. It's top of the table Barnet come to town. So what's your feeling on Oldham Barnet?
We're not great at home, is the truth. So the home fans are much more vociferous against Oldham than we are when we go away. And we've had some dull performances. But it will be Oldham that turn up and pull one out of the bag against Barnet. And it depends if we're firing and we're fit. We can match anyone in that league. So I always put us down for a 3-1 loss because I'll never bet for my team. But I have a sneaking suspicion it'll either be a draw or a sneaky win for Oldham on that one. But my story about Barnet, if you want a quick soundbite. So earlier in the year, we were playing and I'd been away. So I travel a lot with work. I think I was in Vegas, actually. It's like the start of the season or whatever. And I flew back from Vegas on the morning and England were playing Australia in the rugby at Twickenham. And I basically had hospitality tickets again through work for England, Australia. But I said I couldn't go because I was going watching Oldham at Barnet, which was a half-5. So I missed the rugby and full hospitality after getting off a plane from Vegas and went and watched Oldham Barnet play out a 0-0 draw. So that's commitment. Yeah.
Well, I've got to give my prediction here. So I'm looking at the recent head-to-head, and whether this is a form guide or not, but you've kind of you're a bit of a bogey side for them. You drew 0-0 with them in November. You beat them at your place in January last year 2-0. The year before, you beat them away 4-1, and the previous away one was a 3-1 win. Yeah. You got to go back a couple of years since they've actually had the better of you. So. I'm maybe this is the same as your category of a sneaky win, but I'm going to go 1-0 Oldham.
We love that, Rob. Come on.
Yes, come on, Oldham. Rob, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for giving up your time to come and chat with me on my little hobby pod here. So, like I say, we're going to get some folk to now hopefully be following the Oldham result, and then next week I'll do a little match report, see how you guys got on, hoping that Random Fandom is a blessing, not a curse for you guys. So, yeah, like I say, thank you so much for coming on, Rob. Appreciate it.
And thanks for having me, Rob. I really enjoyed it. Really good chat. So thank you.